I never believed in hiding things from my daughter. From the day she learned to speak, I taught her that truth was strength and honesty was protection. Yet, there was one secret I carried in silence for years, not because it was shameful, but because it was powerful. The warehouse stood on the far edge of the city, old and quiet, like a forgotten chapter of my life. I bought it when I was young, during years when survival demanded discipline and sacrifice. While others spent money on comfort, I stored my earnings away in metal shelves and sealed containers. Antiques, legal documents, and assets meant for security, not pride. That warehouse was never about wealth. It was about safety, about knowing that no matter how hard life became, my daughter would never be helpless. I raised Ariba to believe we lived a simple, ordinary life. Our home was modest. Our habits were humble. I wanted her to choose love for the right reasons, not for the promise of luxury. I wanted her to fall in love with character, not comfort. So I kept the warehouse out of our story, like a shadow that only followed me. Then Hamza entered her life. At first, he seemed respectful, polite, the kind of man who knew exactly what to say and when to say it. He praised my daughter's kindness and admired her innocence. Still, something in his eyes made me uneasy. It wasn't cruelty, it was calculation. He watched more than he spoke, listened more than he shared. Ariba was happy, and that happiness made me quiet my doubts. After their marriage, things changed slowly, almost invisibly. Hamza's questions grew sharper. He asked about property values, savings, and future plans, not in concern, but in curiosity. I answered vaguely, smiling when necessary, protecting what he did not deserve to know. I noticed how he judged small things, the furniture, the neighborhood, the way we lived. His smile thinned when he realized there was no sudden inheritance, no hidden luxury waiting to be claimed. That was when I understood why I had kept the warehouse a secret all these years. Because some truths don't test love, they expose greed, and some protections work best when no one knows they exist. Marriage has a way of revealing what love tries to hide. In the beginning, Hamza was careful. Soft words, controlled patience, practiced kindness. But once the wedding celebrations ended and routine settled in, the mask began to slip. It started with small complaints. The apartment was too simple. The car was outdated. The life they lived was not what he imagined. Ariba tried to please him in every way she knew, cooking his favorite meals, cutting back on her own needs, convincing herself that love meant adjustment. I watched from a distance, my heart tighten. In each time her voice lost a little of its light. Hamza's interest in money became impossible to ignore. He spoke openly about friends who married into wealth, about people who knew how to secure their future. His comments always landed like jokes, but his eyes never laughed. He began visiting me more often, asking questions that sounded harmless but carried sharp edges beneath them. "Amy, you've worked all your life." He once said casually, "You must have investments somewhere." I smiled and changed the subject. That smile cost me sleep. One evening, Ariba came to my house after an argument. Her eyes were swollen, her confidence reduced to whispers. She told me Hamza believed our struggles were my fault, that I had kept something hidden, that I was selfish for not helping them live better. Hearing my own daughter doubt me hurt more than his accusations ever could. Then came the moment that erased my hesitation. I returned home unexpectedly one afternoon and heard Hamza's voice on the phone. He didn't see me standing behind the door. "There's something she's hiding," he said sharply. "Old people always do. I just need proof." The words felt cold, not because of what he wanted, but because of how far he was willing to go. That same week, I drove past the warehouse, drawn by instinct and fear. The building looked the same from afar, but as I stepped closer, my chest tightened. The lock was scratched. Fresh marks scarred the metal door. Someone had tried to force it open. In that moment, everything became clear. Hamza wasn't just impatient. He was hunting, and he had chosen the wrong secret to chase. I didn't confront Hamza, not when I saw the marks on the warehouse door, not when I felt the rage burning in my chest. Anger makes people loud, and I needed to be silent. I had protected my daughter for years by hiding the truth. Now I would protect her by revealing it at the right moment. I returned home and acted normal. I smiled, I served tea, I listened while Hamza spoke about ambition and building a better future. Every word he said confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't dreaming of a future with my daughter. He was planning an escape with whatever he could steal along the way. That night, I made my calls. My lawyer was the first to answer, then my accountant, then an old acquaintance who worked in security and understood discretion better than sympathy. By morning, the warehouse had cameras installed, the ownership documents were secured, and every past transaction was documented. Nothing illegal, nothing rushed, just patience and preparation. Meanwhile, Hamza grew careless. He followed me again. This time I was certain. I noticed the same car parked across the street, the same footsteps echoing behind me when I walked too slowly. He thought I was weak. He thought age made me blind. He was wrong. I invited Hamza and Ariba for dinner at my house the following weekend. The table was set carefully, the food warm, the atmosphere calm. Hamza laughed easily, confident in his control. Ariba looked tired, caught between love and doubt. Halfway through the meal, I placed a thick folder on the table. I slid it gently not toward Hamza, but toward my daughter. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "Truth," I said quietly. Inside were photographs of the warehouse door, copies of recorded calls, and printed messages Hamza had sent discussing hidden assets and selling fast. Each page turned my daughter's face paler. Her hands began to shake. Hamza laughed, but the sound cracked. "This is ridiculous. You're overreacting." That was when the doorbell rang. 2 officers stepped inside, calm and professional. They spoke Hamza's name. The room fell silent. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Ariba stood slowly, tears falling without sound. She looked at me not with anger, but with understanding, and in that moment I knew the storm had passed. The truth had finally arrived. The days after Hamza's arrest were quiet, but not peaceful. Silence can be heavy when it carries disappointment, grief, and relief all at once. Ariba stayed with me, moving through the house like someone relearning how to breathe. She didn't cry much. Instead, she asked small questions about trust, about love, about how people change so easily. I didn't rush her answers. Healing doesn't follow commands. Weeks later, on a calm afternoon, I finally took her to the warehouse. I had protected that place for decades, but now it was time to let its truth serve a different purpose. I unlocked the door slowly, the metal echoing through the empty space. Sunlight streamed in, revealing shelves, containers, and records years of discipline and quiet survival. Ariba looked around not with excitement, but with understanding. "So this is what he wanted," she said softly. "Yes," I replied, "but it was never meant for him." She walked through the rows, then stopped and turned to me. Her eyes filled not with regret, but with clarity. "You didn't hide this because you didn't trust me," she said. "You hid it because you wanted me to be loved for who I am." I nodded. That was the truth I never knew how to explain before. Hamza's greed cost him everything. His name became a warning, not a victory. He lost access not only to money, but to dignity. Revenge didn't come through humiliation. It came through consequences, through exposure, through truth. I didn't keep the warehouse as a symbol of power. I used part of its assets to support women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. Women who were blamed for trusting, for loving, for hoping. The rest was secured for Ariba, not as luxury, but as freedom, a safety net she would never have to beg for. One evening, as we locked the warehouse behind us, Ariba held my hand. "Amy," she said, "the real inheritance wasn't in there." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. "No," I answered, "the real inheritance is knowing your worth and never letting anyone measure it with money." We walked away together, leaving the warehouse behind. It had done its job. Some secrets protect wealth. But the right truth protects a life.